Well, hello. Welcome to the Tarot Tory. Come in, come in. Using these cards, I can accurately interpret your fortune. Now, let us begin. The Tower. Oh boy. So it seems you're encountering a difficult challenge. If I were to guess, it is a game. Yes, a game that is difficult not because of its difficulty, but because of its reputation. You find yourself attracted to this game, despite its glaring flaws. Second, the moon. Not a pretty sight. You have been lying to yourself, telling yourself repeatedly, I don't like this game. I don't like this game. This is wrong. You do like the game, and it shakes you to your very core. Lastly, the Hermit. Soon you will find yourself reflecting on this fact. Coming to terms with the fact that you like the game, yet it is not good. And you will find in your heart that even though it is bad, you can still enjoy it. Wait, stop. This isn't your fortune? You let me read all this knowing it wasn't your fortune? Well, whose fortune was it then? Oh God. I've always known this day would come. I've been dreading it for a very, very long time. The day when I admit my sin. A truly atrocious crime. One that deserves the highest forms of punishment. For the longest time, since 2016 when it was released westward. And even now, I'm sorry. It's just so hard for me to say. I have, and I always will, enjoy Fire Emblem Fates. For those that don't know, the title Fire Emblem Fates refers to 3 pathways of a game that have made my life a living hell. Sometimes I may refer to them as individual games, but they are all in fact pathways of one overarching thing. These games make up the 3 pillars of Fire Emblem Fates, those pillars being Birthright, Conquest, and Revelation, otherwise known as the 3 deadly sins. Each of these games play similar, but they all have different stories, characters, and levels. They may have the Pokemon dual release looking thing going on, but trust me, they are completely different games in the same universe, totally different routes. Now, you may be saying, if they're just pathways, why were they sold as separate games? I'll tell you why. Deceit! I was quite young when the cinematic trailers for Fates were making their rounds. It was 2015 then, and things were different. I hadn't played this fucking game yet. I still remember how epic and amazing the trailers were. They were just so hype-inducing. Even watching them now, I get chills. They truly made Fates feel like this grand cinematic tale, hammering home how this game would tear you apart and impact you for years to come. You watch this, and you feel like this could be the most incredible game ever made. That this war between the 2 countries was something you were privileged to experience. The emphasis here was on the big choice. Hoshido versus Nor. Will you choose to side with the family that raised you? Or will you side with the family of your blood? Will you turn your back on those you have come to love over the course of your life? Or will you turn down the family that dedicated their entire life to finding you and bringing you home? Which of these people will you ultimately go to war against? They showed us that Fire Emblem Fates was more than just a game. It was 2 massive stories in one. Stories that could rival the finest of classic literature. They lied! I rewatched all those old trailers, and just as I remembered, there is no mention of these pathways being delegated to separate games. Not even in the launch trailer do they mention this. In every advertisement here, they leave the subtitles Birthright and Conquest mysteriously omitted. You can look in the descriptions of these videos, and you'll find nothing about it. Of course, the information was out there, but 10 or 11-year-old Marx did not expect to do that much research after seeing a cool video game trailer. Obviously, this all gives the viewer the impression that they will be buying one game to get the full experience. They do not see these trailers and think, oh man, this looks so good, I'll buy both parts. To me, this marketing is super deceptive, and it totally got me when I bought the game in 2016. Keep in mind, this kind of release was in no way common for the series. I went to GameStop expecting to buy one copy of Fire Emblem Fates, only to see 2 games staring at me on the shelf. What's a conquest? I don't know if this scenario happened to anyone else, but I was actually pretty upset about it back then. What? I was like 10 years old! I was an idiot! Luckily, I already had a choice kind of set in stone before going into GameStop. Just from the trailers alone, I knew I wanted to side with Hoshido. I loved the old Japanese aesthetic, and I thought the Hoshidan characters' outfits looked really cool. The fact that they were a peace-loving nation stood out to me too. But can you imagine? What if I hadn't been so sure? What would I have done then? You would want to play the beginning of the game and get introduced to both families. You would want to deeply evaluate which country you want to fight for. This choice changes the entire game. It's a big deal. And instead of giving their fans that ample time to make it, they made the consumer make that choice while panicking in a GameStop like a fool! Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Can I help you? Oh god, yes, that would be great. Could you give me a rundown on the political stances of the country of Nor? There actually is a way to get one game with all paths available from the get-go. A special edition version of the game was released where all 3 paths were present on one cartridge. You can tell which cartridge is a special edition one because they opt to combine both games' colors, black and white. Now, it was around $80 at release, but now if you try and get one online, especially a North American copy, you will have to sell a kidney or 2 to afford it. A complete in-box North American version of the special edition is the white whale of my video game collection. I want it so bad it hurts. Like, it really hurts! Or that might just be the ulcer talking. I don't know for sure. In Fire Emblem Fates Conquest, you choose to side with the country you were raised in, Nor. This is the home of your foster siblings, Xander, Camilla, Leo, and Elise. It is ruled by your kidnapper father and general douchebag, King Garen. In Fire Emblem Fates Birthright, you choose to side with the country of your kin, Hoshido. This is the home of your true siblings, Ryoma, Hinoka, Takumi, and Sakura. It is ruled by your benevolent birth mother, Mikoto. Both of these countries are engrossed in a fierce war against each other, with Nor relentlessly attacking Hoshido for its abundant resources, and Hoshido defending themselves from their repeated unjust invasions. Can you tell I'm a Hoshido guy or what? In the DLC path, Revelation, you refuse to side with either family, going rogue to unite the nations alone. Besides the story differences, the gameplay, particularly the difficulty, is adjusted differently in the 3. Birthright is the easiest, giving you pretty much infinite training opportunities and ways to acquire money. The levels in this one are much more straightforward and will be easier to complete given that you will be at a much higher level in the grand scheme of things. Now, some may find this easiness bad, but I kinda like it actually. You can make your army strong as hell, and the process is really satisfying for me. Conquest is the hardest. You get practically none of those training opportunities I mentioned, and your money is a hell of a lot tighter here. You have to manage your funds wisely, or you will suffer the consequences. Namely, shit, I can't afford more staves! Not only that, but the levels themselves are significantly more challenging. You get no leniency here. Make one wrong move and you will be swarmed by enemies and probably lose a unit. It gets tough as nails and you will have to put on your A game and strategy if you want to beat it. I remember that one battle against Takumi at the pier being a pain, and definitely the battle with all the kitsunes. I had to retry that several times. Revelation is a mix of these two. You get the training opportunities and wealth of Birthright with the oftentimes tricky and challenging levels of Conquest. The big draw here is you will get all of the characters from both paths to play as here, so you will get a ton of different choices for your army. The only issue here is that you will get groups of characters joining you sporadically throughout the game, and since the timing of them joining is different from their standard pathway, many times by the time you acquire them, they are already obsolete and hard to fit into your army. It's kind of infuriating that I have access to so many of my favorite characters here, because I can only fit so many of them on my team reliably. But regardless, it's good to have them here. And if you really want, you can put in the time to grind up certain characters to where they can keep up with the rest of your team. It's definitely not impossible to do. So with all these choices, where the fuck does one even begin? Well, naturally, with the character creator. This is one of the best features of this game in my opinion. If you thought Awakening's character creator was solid, Well, this one is definitely a similar phase of matter. We can really make our character look like a jackass and more of a jackass. You can give them any number of unrealistic hairstyles and colors, give them various beauty marks or horrific eye injuries. It truly is the full package. Like Awakening, you can also pick between 3 voices for your character, which is cool, but this one is slightly less fun because you can't repeatedly give Corin crippling guilt like you could with Robin.
I can always count on you. I can help too.
It's my fault. It's my fault.
You can adjust your avatar's attributes to your liking, making certain stats more and less prominent. Kind of stock standard RPG stuff. So the gameplay, it's great. If you've played Awakening, it's pretty much that, but better in most areas. That's not to say that Awakening's gameplay is bad, of course not, but Fates takes what Awakening did and tweaks a few things. The previously broken as hell pair-up mechanic, for instance, has been changed and is now no longer broken as hell, but is still incredibly useful and so good. If you know Fire Emblem, yeah, it's Fire Emblem. Turn-based grid walking strategy fun for all. Fates brings a ton of new classes and weapons to the table. Like, many of these characters are some of the most broken in the series, but broken in a really fun, batshit insane kind of way. Like, I've never ever seen Ryoma die. He could probably solo the whole damn thing with ease. Takumi, like his older brother, is crazy prone to critical hits, and the Fujin Yumi allows him to ignore all terrain penalties. Xander is a very strong unit, even if his resistance isn't the greatest. Leo is one of my favorite magic users in the series, and Camilla is just a monster. If archers weren't a thing, she could probably solo the whole game as well. The hub world is where you spend your time in between battles. It's a customizable My Castle, otherwise known as the Astral Plane. In lore, you kinda just have to accept that this is a safe world that exists for some reason. From here you can do all sorts of neat things. Using Dragon Vein points that you get automatically at the end of battles, you can buy and upgrade various facilities to mess around with. You can buy accessories to slap on your characters, like... Hey, that's me! And that's just funny! You can feed and grow your pet dragon friend Lilith. Even when she decides to randomly die for some reason, you can still give food to her ghost. Yeah, like, do you ever just feed a ghost some beans? You can buy weapons, staves, and seals to upgrade your units. You can cook meals for your units that improve their stats in battles, and you can visit a hot spring that to my knowledge is entirely useless except for ogling and recruiting the unit Izana in Birthright and Conquest. I like this guy. The best thing the Astral Plane houses, however, is the online play. Now, I've never really dove head first into it, but it's really cool. You can go to other users' castles and have battles with them. When you win, you can borrow some of their units to use on your own team in online battles and during your campaign. You can also do online Wi-Fi battles against players, and you'd expect it to be dead as a doornail in there, but I actually managed to find some players. The first time I tried it out, I managed to find a guy like right off the bat, which shocked me. But it's all very cool. I never played online back in its heyday, but I'm sure it was a pretty fun time. I do know it was rife with hackers, though. So... what next? Oh, right. Everything else. Yeah. I think this game caused my lifespan to decrease. All 3 versions of Fates have very solid and compelling gameplay. They are very replayable, fun, and are some of the best RPG experiences on the 3DS. But Fire Emblem Fates is infamous not just among the Fire Emblem community, but in the gaming sphere as a whole. It is widely mocked, ridiculed, and memed to this very day. That's because the writing of these games, especially in the case of the English translation, is a steaming pile of dog shit! Where could I even begin with this? It's just so bad! I mentioned earlier that the trailers made it out to be this dramatic tale of love and war, a gripping story that would make you fall in love with the characters and the lore of this practically brand new world. Instead, it makes me want to rip my own eyes out. Fire Emblem Fates is not War and Peace. It's fanfic in game form. Yeah, fanfic is really the perfect term to describe Fates. The story is beyond corny, full of holes, poorly thought out, and... miserable. When you actually put some thought into the basic premise of the game, it sounds like a soap opera, or one of those cheap romance novels you see mothers reading. This royal was born to Hoshidan royalty, but was kidnapped by Norians and raised as a royal of that country. But wait! It turns out they weren't actually just Hoshidan royalty. They were born in a whole other kingdom that nobody knows about! Yeah, okay, let's start with that, actually. As it turns out, Korin isn't even related to the Hoshidan siblings. Mikoto is not their biological mother, and Sumeragi isn't our biological father. Does that not just ruin the whole hook? Wasn't it supposed to be blood versus loyalty? See, what did I tell you earlier? Lies and deception! Azura here is more related to Korin than anyone else, and that's just fucking weird! Oh, speaking of which... She is a total disgrace! Azura is the first character, the first thing we see of this game. And yeah, that is not a great start. That's not how you swim! She's the first failure of a character I'll be talking about, and when I call her a character, I use that word very loosely. Azura exists to give exposition. She is a plot device and little else. She is only here to sell us on the DLC path Revelation and, increase the budget a ton on magical water effects, detailed hair animation, and singing, I guess. The game shoves her down your throat and acts like she is the most important thing ever. After Korin, of course! But think about it. You could take her out of it all and the story would be better off for it. Nothing would be negatively impacted. Besides having to remove some admittedly nice-looking cutscenes. She was made out to be a foil to Korin, but she fails at that hard. Sure, they do have similar circumstances, they were both kidnapped and raised among different royals, but most of the time she hardly seems connected to either of these families. In both routes, it seems like Azura hardly interacts with anyone outside of Korin, and when she does, it usually has something to do with them. Korin is always agonizing over their situation, having to fight their own family, having to pick between blood and trust, having to kill their own loved ones. But Azura does all of this in strides. The only time she seems to struggle with this is when she cries with Korin after some conquest trauma. But the whole time she was so aloof and distant that it was completely out of left field in my opinion. Now, for those of you who know, yes, I'm finally going to address the elephant in the room. This goddamn orb! I've not met a single person on this planet that thought this was done well. Essentially, Azura uses this one-off crystal ball to show Korin that the real King Garen died long ago, and that the current Garen is being possessed by a demon to spark the war between Hoshido and Nor. When Korin asks how they can show this to their siblings, she says that the only way is to get Garen to sit on the magical throne of Castle Shirasagi, which will reveal his true form to the world. Now initially this sounds fine enough, kind of roundabout, but not entirely ridiculous, but then you realize that this means the Norian army has to invade and conquer Hoshido to get him on that damn throne in the first place! You know, I really see no problems with this plan. I mean, it's the only way, right? Please get the fuck away from me! This entire invasion is a farce! You're really telling me the reason thousands of innocent Hoshidans are going to die is so one guy can sit on a throne? Why? Why isn't there a way to explain the situation to our Norian siblings? Are their heads really so far up their own asses that they can't receive the message? The entire campaign, they're all spouting lines about how their dad wasn't always like this and how his behavior is disturbing them, so why can't we tell them the truth? Their dad and his cronies are a band of cartoon villain lunatics, and they acknowledge that many times that he is off-the-walls crazy, so I just can't understand why the narrative wraps itself around backwards and sideways to try and tell us that the Norian siblings will not believe in stopping him. 99% of the story, they believe every damn thing that comes out of Korin's mouth. But now, this one time when it actually matters, they would apparently decide to lose all their faith in them. Azura even says that a powerful mage like Leo has the capabilities of seeing this crystal ball. So even if they doubted Korin was telling the truth, why couldn't we find a way to show Leo? They'd have to believe him. In fact, Azura does show Leo in Birthright, and he fully believes it then. It all just boggles my mind. The fact that they thought this would justify a horrific and undeserved invasion of Hoshido makes me question the writer's sanity. Like, the fact that Corin, who is so anti-violence that it hurts most of the time, so will find another way about everything, just easily goes, oh yeah, that makes sense, I'll potentially murder my Hoshidan sibling so we can sit this guy on the throne, is absolutely absurd and contradicts everything we've witnessed thus far.
Tell me, why are you here?
I followed you, dumbass. Azura being anything more than just an exposition bot that makes terrible decisions is ruined by another one of the worst abominations of storytelling I've ever heard. The Curse of Vala. If you've played Fates, first, I'm sorry. And second, yeah, you knew I was gonna talk about this. The hidden kingdom of Vala, the one you travel through in Revelation, is home to a magical curse. This curse causes anyone who attempts to speak of it outside of its borders to disappear and die. Why is it cursed? I don't know. Never gets elaborated on other than the fact that it's a thing that exists. Yep, that's literally all they could come up with as to why all the huge plot details of Revelation are never touched on in the other routes. Also as to why Azura is such a cryptic piece of shit. That doesn't explain why nothing gets revealed in Conquest while they're literally standing in Vala, though. Vala itself is terrible, as you'd probably expect. Most everything about it can be boiled down to just don't ask. God, that line really does summarize so much. God never played Fire Emblem Fates. Vala existing takes so much of what made Fates interesting and just sucks it down the drain. The true reason Hoshido and Nor are at war is because some big dumb dragon doesn't like people having fun. Not because, oh, I don't know, Nor is poverty-stricken and on the brink of starvation and Hoshido has plenty to give and seems to be unaware and uncaring of Nor's strife. Not because of an ancient ideological feud. And not because Norians need a new place to live because their homeland is literally in squalor. It's because this rando dragon god who lives at the bottom of a cliff is fucking pissed. I already mentioned how Anankos existing and then fucking Corin's mom threw off Corin's entire dynamic with their families. I'm still convinced they did this just to prevent Corin from having a directly incestuous relationship. But it also makes for some of the most awkward dialogue ever. Corin trying to find a way to explain the situation to their siblings is so hard to watch. The stupid curse makes them sound like a raving lunatic. They are one. And this makes it all the more mind-boggling when people decide to put their blind faith in them. While we're on the subject of Corin, they are one of the worst protagonists in gaming, nay, in all media. While I generally dislike using this term, they are the definition of a Mary Sue character. The entire universe revolves around them, despite them being an absolute jackass. Their siblings so often acknowledge how easily trusting and naive they are, but do absolutely nothing to stop them. Everybody appreciates the hell out of them and treats them like a decorated leader, despite literally having no experience and never proving themselves to have what it takes. They've just been elected leader of their party for no reason other than they're the protagonist, of course they're the leader. They are in no way a tactician, but the game likes to make you think they are. Come on, intelligent systems. They're not Robin, they're just stupid. They whine and cry constantly, and their biggest life problem is, oh, my life is so horrible, way too many people love me. They're extremely naive, which is to be expected of someone who was trapped in a tower all their life. That wouldn't be a problem on its own, but it becomes a major issue when they are suddenly the leader of a fucking army. They were chosen by the prophecy, selected by the Yato sword to save the world. But they do absolutely nothing to prove their worthiness. They're just as much of a bumbling fool at the end of the game as they are at the beginning. Despite this, however, everyone loves them. They are a flawless god that can do no wrong. Their relationships with other characters are entirely uninteresting because since Corin is meant to be an avatar for the player, they can't have any traits that the player could deem as flawed or problematic. When I was playing Birthright, I was so intrigued by the battle against Leo. His monologue was all about how he'd always felt inferior to Corin, resenting them for how his siblings had always loved Corin more than him. I was like, holy shit, some actual depth to the relationship here! But then immediately afterward, Leo said he was lying about the whole thing. Because God forbid somebody actually dislikes Corrin. God forbid they have an actual flaw. They are a worthless character that drags the entire narrative down by having it focus so hard on them. They have no business being so prominent in the story. Fates is all about Corrin all the time. Everything revolves around them, and they are not well written enough to justify that. They steal the show from everyone, and their presence only serves to lower everyone to their level of shit. So much of these games are just so poorly thought out. In both standard routes, Nor are the bad guys. Nor is always the evil side. They never expand on any of Hoshido's flaws as a nation. That makes things really uninteresting, and even more confusing as to why anyone would ever choose to side with Nor. There's no balance to the choice here whatsoever. You play Birthright if you're morally sound, you play Revelation if you're a coward, and you play Conquest if you're a fucking sicko. By the time the choice happens, Corrin has already witnessed firsthand what sort of evil Nor houses. They already see how much of a villain Garen is. Multiple times, in fact. So why would Corrin logically ever side with Nor? Oh wait, they're an idiot. That kind of explains it. These games like to throw stuff at you that serves very little narrative point and almost seems like it's there for shock value more than anything. Characters just randomly die throughout the story, and it's also stupid and pointless. There's no emotional impact for me here at all. It's like intelligent systems just threw these in to check off emotional trauma tallies on a sheet rather than to actually have them serve a purpose or, help them develop a single character. For instance, they randomly kill off Kaze in Birthright if you haven't reached A support with him by Chapter 15. Okay, what the fuck? Azura decides to die at the end of Birthright and Conquest because I don't fucking know, her song or something. Poor Azura. She died as she lived, without any goddamn explanation. Flora lights herself on fire at one point in Birthright out of nowhere. God damn. Well, Felicia, I guess that's your cross to bear. The only times I feel like death was done right was with Ryoma and Takumi. There was some actual emotional punch there, but I still don't really feel like they were done justice. Yeah, their deaths make the player feel like a monster, but I don't think Corrin was changed by this experience nearly as much as they should have been. Most of the game's cast is bland and uninteresting, but more than that, they just feel shallow. In Awakening, they do a great job of giving each character substance. Each one of them has an actual life, stuff outside of the current conflict that makes them interesting and alive. They have stories to tell. And in Fire Emblem Three Houses, the characters all have such great chemistry with one another. The cast of Fates have neither of these things. In Awakening, less characters had supports with each other, but that made it so that the ones that they did have were very high quality and gave us a lot of insight into the characters' lives. Most of the time, anyway. Fates opts to go for quantity over quality here. Yes, practically everybody can support with everybody else, but now these conversations are short and pointless. This hurts the characters in so many ways. Seriously, I can only think of a few conversations that actually do their characters justice and aren't just meh. And as far as chemistry goes, the vast majority of the ensemble feels like, just random people working for the main characters. Most of them don't feel like they're actually invested in the cause, they're just there. With most of the cast taking a back seat to Corrin and Co.'s antics, you might assume that means the main lords are pretty compelling characters, right? Who assumed that? This is Fire Emblem Fates we're talking about here. With such a big emphasis on these two families, you'd hope they'd be legitimately interesting, but no, they're really not. Starting with the Hoshidans, Elder Brother Ryoma is a great unit and is a total badass, but he really doesn't have that much going on character-wise. I like him, but he's just, kind of one note. Heh. Big Sister Hinoka is kind of irritating sometimes, but she's leagues better than whatever they got going on over there. Younger brother Takumi has the most going on. He hates your guts starting out. He's vocally distrustful of anything that is vaguely Norian. I really like that he had the guts to stand up and dislike Corrin, but in Birthright especially, he just seems to forget all that so quickly, and that's a shame. Little sister Sakura is shy and cute. Cool! Now on to the... Oh, God. I don't like him. Big Brother Xander is to me one of the worst examples of characterization in Fates, and that's a pretty big accomplishment given everything about these games. He claims to be anti-Garen, but he never delivers on that. He so easily abandons his morals, and he's kind of a terrible person in that regard. I've seen so many people try to defend him on this. They're like, oh, he's a Camus archetype character. Those guys always fight for their nation despite being at odds with what they do. All those guys are beloved while Xander is hated. He doesn't do anything that they don't do. Well, for starters, he's way worse written than Camus. And secondly, the Camus archetype consists of sympathetic antagonists. Xander is hailed as a hero and is supposed to be one of the good guys. Can you see my problem here? He also commits the biggest sin in this game. During the climax of the Birthright campaign, you have one final duel with Xander. Nobody wants this except for him. When he goes to attack you, your Nurian sister Elise jumps in and takes the hit for you, sacrificing herself. In this actually heartbreaking scene, she gives her last wish to her brother, pleading for Xander to lay down his sword and to stop fighting, letting the Hoshidans bring an end to the war. And then immediately afterward, he pisses all over her sacrifice and decides to fight Corrin anyway. Once again, we're supposed to like this character. And then after the duel, he decides to go and die for some reason. It'd be way more impactful if he had to live on with the guilt of having cut down his own sister, but no, that's too much for this game. Axe him. I can't say anything more about her that hasn't already been said, but she's a total creep who could have had a really interesting story if the writers weren't busy giving Corrin a blowjob. Also, her hair is purple, and I hate purple, yikes.
We're a real family now. And I love my family more than anything.
Oh! Leo is okay. He's alright. Like I mentioned earlier, the writers completely gloss over his inferiority complex, and that's unfortunate. Lastly, so, if the first generation characters are such a bust, what about the second generation? Nope, they can't even qualify because, oh my god, the child-making mechanic in this game is so weird and dumb that I'm scarred for life. In Fire Emblem Awakening, time travel plays a significant role in the story. When you pair characters up and get them to fall in love, mysterious characters from the future will show up and join your campaign. These young adults happen to be the future children of characters in your army. I love the way they did this. They tie these characters' children existing into the story so well. These guys are not only here to see their long-lost parents again, but they're on a mission to stop their horrible future from coming to pass. They're having their own journey. It just so happens to intersect with yours. Look at that! I made that! This child mechanic was very popular, and it was only natural to bring it back in the next game. But not every Fire Emblem game can involve time travel. So how did they do it? They went insane. So here's how they explain this. When characters reach support rank S, they conceive children. But oops, there's a war going on, so they gotta find a safe place to put these kids. That safe place is called the Deep Realms, and in these Deep Realms, time moves differently. A couple of days is like a year in there. So in the blink of an eye, the child you stuck there is now being contacted by colleges and getting a part-time job at Wendy's. Do I even need to explain how fucked up this is? Also, does Intelligent Systems even realize how pregnancy works? You can't just squirt out a child the minute you're done sexing. That takes several months. And that really doesn't work with the time frame of these games. I can't believe I'm complaining about the logistics of baby making in a Fire Emblem game, but here we are. There's a lot more that can be said about Fates' shortcomings, but most of it amounts to poor writing, an unprofessional translation, and missed potential. Like, they came up with so much lore here, but it never gets touched on or explained in any meaningful way. Like, who are the first dragons? Why are the first dragons? Who is the Rainbow Sage? Why are the divine weapons the way they are? Why is Flora and Felicia being political hostages glossed over so much? What's up with Anankos and the rulers of Vala? What's up with the concubine wars? Why are Nor and Hoshido specifically so important to Anankos? Most importantly, why were the petting minigames removed in non-Japanese versions of the game? Yeah, sure, I can blow on my units, but that's not the same, damn it! We'll likely never know any of this. It's all just unanswered stuff that Intelligent Systems didn't think was important enough to tell us, and it's a waste of time to think about it any more than that. What isn't a waste of time to think about, though? Why the hell do I like these games? They're terrible! How could I even sit through them, let alone enjoy them? Well, I'm not sure exactly. See, these games have a lot of flaws. A ton of them. I mean, I just spent that whole damn time ranting about them, and I could keep going. But there are some things I like, too. Like I said earlier, the gameplay itself is solid. I think I actually prefer the battles here over Awakening, Echoes, and even Three Houses. I love that the weapons, except for the staves, have infinite durability. That's something I've always found annoying to deal with in the other games. I love a ton of the classes in Fates. The ninja class is infamously broken and loads of fun, but my honorable mentions go to the Great Master, Malignite, both Beast classes, Sword Master, the Maiden Butler classes, Spear Fighter, and pretty much all of the DLC classes. These all deserve a hearty thumbs up from me. The music and general aesthetic of the games are unmatched. Tracks like A Light Storm, A Dark Fall, Justice R.I.P. Storm, and Glory Ruin Deeds all make me dance around like an idiot. The soundtrack does a way better job of immersing me in the story than the pitiful world building. Don't kill me, but I think overall Fates has a better soundtrack than Echoes, Three Houses, and Awakening. They all have amazing tunes as well, and all three of those games have more memorable, huge, big final boss themes, but the music used in battles has way less variety and is overall more repetitive in those games than in Fates 10-1. There's just so much style and substance here, and the music always seems to fit each individual battle so well. There's this fun thing that happens where, depending on which version you're playing, the instrumental solos of the track that plays while you're preparing for battle will change to better fit the nation you're fighting for. That's awesome! I love neat shit like that. The character design here is great. For the most part. They do a good job of making these two different nations of characters look distinct from one another. I love the designs of the armor and the clothing and the weapons, and the mounts look amazing. In most Fire Emblem games you got your stock standard Pegasus and Wyverns, but in Fates you also get these giant badass birds that Kinshi Knights fly on. Those are sick! They also do this cute thing where there will be a shared critical quote between the lords and their respective retainers.
You're right where I want you.
Right where I want you.
Right where I want you. I won't lose.
I won't lose.
I won't lose.
That's awesome! I love neat shit like that. The cutscenes look beautiful. While I also enjoy the more standard anime style of cutscenes in Echoes and Three Houses, this animation is just so appealing to the eye. I wish it were possible for the entire game to look like the cutscenes. I wish I looked like the cutscenes! With all of the units you can affect, Fates has so much replayability. I'd say that this, with Awakening as a close second, is my most replayed Fire Emblem game. One of my most replayed games in general. The writing is so bad that it's actually really funny. If you go into these games trying to take them seriously, yeah, you're in for a real disappointment. But if you decide to put all that aside, you might seriously enjoy yourself. I've laughed a ton playing these games. Yeah, that wasn't what the developer intended for me to do, but it's still a plus. Hey, if people are legally allowed to watch The Bachelor, I should be allowed to like Fates. Fates is like junk food for me. It's 100% a guilty pleasure, but a pleasure nonetheless. Everybody's got something they feel guilty for enjoying, and hey, in the grand scheme of things, enjoying Fire Emblem Fates is a much better guilty pleasure than cooking meth. I did it! I can't believe it, but I did it! I admitted my sin! I can finally go on in life knowing that the curse of Fire Emblem Fates has left me! Finally, I can be happy! Well, shit.